Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. It is Thursday. It is January the 22nd. I am in Las Vegas, and my voice is nearly gone. It sounds ridiculous, actually. I don't know why people do this, but if you have anything to do with trade shows or if you're ever doing gatherings or organizations that are planning these big meetings, can you please stop putting live bands and really loud music where people are supposed to be meeting and having conversations and learning things and having business discussions? It's the most bizarre activity. In any case, today's Kyle Seraphin Show is going to be covering a couple of topics. We're going to get in hard and fast on Greenland, on tariffs, and then on the, messaging that Democrats are putting out that they would like to abolish ICE and why. It's kind of fascinating. I'm looking at it kind of in a detached way, especially because I have very little emotion about it after walking tens of, probably 20,000 steps yesterday and just stomping all around this convention center. For those of you that are wondering, SHOT Show is a convention for the firearms industry. That may or may not be obvious why I'm here. In fact, I think I've had a couple of people say, hey, what are you doing? What do you have to do with firearms? And my thought has been, as much as I am talking about politics and what we talk about here on this podcast has to do with that, I don't love politics. I don't think most Americans love politics. I think politics is the thing that we have to discuss at this moment in order to be able to enjoy the basic freedoms that we would like to be able to enjoy. And if you want to get involved in, celebrating American liberty, you have to talk about the way the system works, what the system's doing to either infringe on or protect your liberties. And then once you feel like that's okay, you can probably step off and do the other things. But for the time being, that's what we talk about here, simply because it's the biggest threat to both probably my physical safety. That's been my general thought. Maybe some of your physical safety as well for those people that were involved in January 6th or were protesters outside of abortion clinics or have ever done anything that might get them on what they think is the wrong side of the government. Even just putting out social media content that causes people to have a disagreement with you. All of these things could lead to you not having your freedom. And so we end up obsessed in that space. But it is a fairly narrow market, I think, for those of us that would rather do something else. So in any case, I'm acutely aware of that as I wander around. And everybody that's a gun person is a sort of reluctant political person as well. And also, as I talk to people, my voice is getting destroyed doing so. We're going to get into the tariff situation. There was the lead story that I saw on Catholic Votes Loop. We're not doing a financial agreement with them, but they still have really good coverage. So if you guys are not checking them out, go ahead and recommend my friends over at catholicvote.org/loop or get Loop, and you guys can get the daily email, which I continue to get, and I have for years now. Highly recommend. Let's go ahead and do a quick sponsor read. The folks, this is actually acutely important to me at the moment. The question of water in the desert is something that's on my brain. So we'll get into that, and then we'll do today's program. The sponsor is Cove Pure, their sponsor. They're also something I'm actually really missing while I'm here in Las Vegas because I don't have access to my normal amounts of fluids, and the water doesn't taste great in most hotels. You guys probably have the same experience. That's one of the big upsides. Cove Pure is a drinking water system. It is plumbing free, so you can set it up on a countertop. It takes about 15 minutes to push the buttons and walk through. And if you've ever done a different filter, you usually have to prime these filters. The question is whether you did it or not, whether there's going to be a leak or not, whether you're going to have garbage still leaking through and you're just thinking that you're getting the solution. The Cove Pure machine actually will show you what it's filtering out by percentages, what the total dissolved solids amounts coming out are, which means you get rid of all the things you don't want in there with this clear wave technology. It gets rid of 99.9% of contaminants. That's going to be your PFAs, your microplastics, your pharmaceutical residues, the fluoride, all the kind of things that can add to, poor taste, and then also questionable, let's call them benefits, because even though some of these things are actually added intentionally, we've got a lot of questions on whether or not we want them. So Cove Pure does exactly what you want. It gives you pure water. It's the exact thing that I don't have in Las Vegas in the desert, which would probably help my voice as well. It's easy to set up. Again, super sleek. It's a great looking machine. And then you can push buttons and get the temperature you want as well, which is really nice. And again, a thing that I'm sort of missing out here. I'm sort of at the mercy of whatever I can grab as I move around. And there's not even a fridge in this freaking... There's not even a fridge in this hotel. Rio is going to get a mediocre review from me. Long and short, check out Cove Pure. The website is Cove, Pure, pure.com/Kyle. Again, covepure.com/Kyle. Nothing better than just something simple like water with the push of a button, hot, cold, lukewarm. If you wanted to make coffee or tea, things that we are missing here as well. All those things are available, and you can do it just on your countertop. So check them out right now. You're going to get $200 off with our website, covepure.com/KYLE. Link in the show description. All right, let's dive into today's program and see what kind of damage we can do. And I wonder if that was one of those other things that showed an audio glitch. I'm sorry about all those things. Some of these things are a little bit difficult to mess with. So let's dive right into it. Let's go into Trump planning a tariff drop. He's going to drop the tariffs. I actually have some historical kind of grab. I wanted to go back in and see what was Donald Trump actually saying about tariffs and what was he saying he was going to do right when he was coming into office. So I went into my own timeline on social media and pulled a Donald Trump clip where he was clearly trolling the leaders of Europe, possibly the NATO allies, kind of messing with Mexico and things like that. And he was trolling them in January of 2025, so right on a year. It's kind of a good little retrospective. Let's cover into this article first. The question of tariffs, even whether or not the president has the ability to levy tariffs, has been kind of ongoing. He said on January 21st, which would have been yesterday, his administration had reached a framework agreement with NATO on the future of Greenland, and that was going to allow him to drop the tariffs that were set to take place in February. This might be the 6th or 7th time that I've seen Trump do this move, which is that he threatens to do something. It sounds really big and bad. Maybe they even go forward and they propose the policy with some numbers, and then people go and they cave to whatever the demand is, or they're able to reach the deal. And he always looks like he's backing up. We had a conversation last night, the advertising agency guys that I work with, we're discussing this kind of like, is the Trump thing. You ask for more than you expect you're going to get. You retreat to a position that's maybe a little bit less, then you continue to push just a little bit further, and you end up sounding somewhat reasonable. For those of you guys that have heard me do this before, I always thought maybe this is the art of the deal. I didn't read the book, and it doesn't actually appeal to me. But the whole idea of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe 1 step in, again, you're still 2 steps forward at the end of the day. And it looks like you showed a compromise. He seems to do this quite a bit. In a True Social post, Donald Trump said that he reached an understanding with the UN Secretary, Mark Rutte, during a meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Based on a very productive meeting I had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have reached a framework for a future deal with respect to Greenland. And in fact, the entire Arctic region, he said. This solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States of America and for all NATO allies. I'm not sure that I care all that much about what the NATO allies think, but it is interesting that people are sort of giving the Donald Trump is correct, and here is the Secretary General of NATO talking about just that.
So statements from me will not add anything here. And when it comes to the Arctic, I think President Trump is right. Other leaders in NATO are right. We need to defend the Arctic. We know that these sea lanes are opening up. We know that China and Russia are increasingly active in the Arctic. There are 8 countries bordering on the Arctic. 7 are a member of NATO. That's Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, Iceland, Canada and the US. And there's only 1 country bordering on the Arctic outside NATO, and that's Russia. And I would argue there is a 9th country, which is China, which is increasingly active in the Arctic region. So President Trump and other leaders are right. We have to do more there. We have to protect the Arctic against Russian and Chinese influence. And that's exactly what NATO ambassadors decided to do in September. We are working on that, making sure that collectively will we defend the Arctic region. So statements from me will not add anything here. And when it comes to the Arctic, I think...
And of course, the big tagline there for at least the people that are the MAGA types and the people on the right wing are Donald Trump was right. And in this case, there you go. That does not mean that that is a universally held opinion. And so Politico not letting anyone down today with a very salacious headline, "Our American Dream is Dead." I'm just going to let that sit for a second. The EU concedes that Donald Trump is not on its side. I listened to a couple of different European leaders. I won't subject you to them. It's one thing to listen to American liberals. It's quite another to listen to a European liberal. I do have some American liberal types that I will play for you. Listening to them talk about what the values are of Europe was quite striking to me. Things like universal health care, things like required and mandatory family leaves and different programs. Some of these things have snuck their way into America, but I would say, unfortunately, they really are socialistic values, and they're very much government overreach into what we would otherwise want to do free market. So I don't know what their American dream is, but I did want to share that headline as it's kind of fun. Also, they did this very intentionally. You'll notice Politico used a picture of Donald Trump's cabinet members. You see Scott Bessent, you've got Marco Rubio sitting in here, looks like Susie Wiles sitting in this picture, and they're more or less looking at Donald Trump up on a screen, but they took a moment where Marco Rubio, you can't see this if you're just listening, but he reaches down and he touches his face, and it looks like he's like probably wiping sweat off his brow, or maybe he's smoothing his eyebrows. I mean, I have no idea what the context of this was, but it's a still photo that looks like he's going, "Oh no, Donald Trump is speaking." And of course, the headline again, the visual of this is always so important, but our American dream is dead. So it says the European governments have reached a difficult conclusion. The Americans are the baddies now. I did essentially get that from watching probably 4 or 5 different clips of European leaders addressing the United States in this forum. Again, I don't remember what the movie was. Was it a Joe Pesci moment where he's like, "You only exist out here because of me"? I always think that when you hear some of these people talking about it, it's like the amount of money that is funded, the amount of military presence, the actual major deterrents for anybody doing something to NATO. It was always the United States and sort of the big stick that the U.S. carried. So it's interesting that their dream is dead, or that they think that European values should rule the day. It's like, well, I kind of agree. You should have European values. Maybe America could withdraw from it. By the way, for whatever it's worth, I actually thought that's what America first meant, because I kind of was leaning towards the America-only version of it. Anyhow, leaders of 27 European EU countries have assembled in Brussels for an emergency summit. They did so yesterday. I guess they got there today. This is the assessment that predominantly held by those across European capitals, according to 9 EU diplomats. Again, I'm desperately interested to find out what these people say. These officials come from countries with varying degrees of historic fondness for the United States. They made it clear that their way of thinking is particularly stark, particularly when they used to have strong ties to Washington, D.C. The sense of dread and skepticism remains, and the summit will go on despite Donald Trump declaring late Wednesday that he struck a deal for Greenland, will not impose tariffs on the EU nation, and underscores how the gathering has become more than just the latest blow-up. I don't know what their European dream being dead is, and I don't know what their dream for America is, nor do I know what their right to have a dream about America is. But they quote an unnamed diplomat here saying, quote, "Our American dream is dead. Donald Trump has murdered it." This is a diplomat from a country that has been in the NATO group for a period of time. Again, they don't like that Donald Trump is negotiating on behalf of the United States. This is actually one of the things that I do find most galling. You guys know I'm not a MAGA hat wearer. I don't put the red hat on. I don't cheerlead for this administration or the other. But when I do see people in Europe thinking that what their concept of America is not being met, or that their expectations for Americans in the United States is not being met, I kind of say good. That is closer to what I thought we were getting. I'll give you kind of a little taste, if it's good with you, on Donald Trump 1 year ago, January of 2025. I don't have the exact date, but this is what he was sort of promising as he got in. This was one of the early trolling statements as he got on Fox News and kind of gave a speech and an update and a discussion of what he wanted to accomplish. And let's listen to it.
It's ours. We're going to be changing, sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada.
All right. So the discussion of Mexico, when he says it's ours, by the way, I think he's talking about Greenland in that case. The question of whether or not they were going to have tariffs and how they were going to be used, you guys, we've seen this sort of play out over the last 12 months or so. So people have been talking about tariffs, whether or not they're justifiable, whether or not you can get away with it, whether or not the president actually has the authority to do it. CBS reporting the same thing on tariffs. They actually have several stories this morning, repeated false or exaggerated claims about Greenland as he pushes for U.S. ownership. Amusingly enough, as you said, or as I'm saying, and he said a year ago, Donald Trump was pushing this. He said it's ours. I don't think that's actually true. I actually think it's kind of funny. And at the time, I thought it was a funny troll. That is actually one of my favorite Donald Trump things to do. I don't have a ton of things that I love about the guy because I just don't feel that emotional about it. But there is something amusing about someone who knows that where the button is, and then he goes and he pushes it and he goes, this thing, it's ours. It's not yours. We're going to come and take it. So there you go. It has to get a fact check from CBS News. President Donald Trump, has made a series of claims about Greenland in recent weeks, insisting the United States needs to take control of the island to protect Americans, a view that Greenland officials and NATO allies reject. Apparently, their dream is dead. The World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, Mr. Trump called acquiring Greenland, quote, a core national security interest of the United States of America, reiterating his interest in acquiring the self-governing territory from Denmark. I saw some quotations. I guess they have their own version of a prime minister. There's something like 50,000 people that live on this place. And they said that they would like to be not Danish and not Americans, but in fact, like to be Greenlanders. So be it. I still think that you're going to find that the folks that have to make compromises are going to do so because there's a lot of money involved. The United States wields a lot of influence. And of course, the threat of tariffs could be problematic. That is getting people, even in the leftist side of the Senate and congressional campaigns coming up for the midterms, activated so they can come and talk about it, which is where we're going to go in just a second. Before we do that, how about we address Speaker Mike Johnson, who kind of makes an unusual claim. I've got the Constitution up here. We're going to go through it. But he suggests that there are Article 2 powers that allows the president to levy tariffs. That's currently being contested. I don't know if that's true or not. And it seems like there should be a document we could refer to. It seems like these guys never actually do that. Here he is answering questions about it.
We'll see where it goes. We'll have to see. I told Manu he'd be next.
You have an opportunity to try to block any vote challenging Trump's tariffs. His authority is expiring at the end of the month. Will you insert in a rule a provision blocking any effort to challenge Trump's tariffs?
We're determining all of that. What I would say is that I have no intention of getting in the way of President Trump and his administration and how they've been using this very effectively. I mean, you're talking about, I think it's $10 trillion or more. I don't know the exact total, but trillions of dollars have been brought into the U.S. in 1 year's time since President Trump took over. The U.S. economy is growing. Gas prices that are at 5-year low. The inflation rate is coming down. You've heard all this articulated here today. We will be touting those wins over the coming days, and part of this is because of the president's strategy. It is working, and no one can dispute that. And he has used the tariff power that he has under Article 2 very effectively. The Article 1, he has not exceeded his authority. There's no reason, in my view, for the Article 1 branch to intervene in that, and we'll have to see how it plays out. So I'm not going to project one way or the other how it goes, but that is our perspective. We want to assist President Trump and his administration in continuing to deliver for the people, to deliver the American First agenda, and to continue this great run of victories that we have had and we've been experiencing. Last one was back.
This actually goes back to the thing we did a couple days ago. There was an entire episode entitled A Crisis of Ignorance, and I just can't help but imagine how few people in America even know what the Article 1 powers are, what the Article 2 powers are. They may not even recognize that those are even references to the United States Constitution. That is sort of the crisis of ignorance we have in this country. Tariffs which are essentially a tax, but oftentimes are referred to as sort of a duty. You guys will see that if you've ever had to do a customs duty. They are specifically mentioned in the Constitution, and they're not in Article 2, it turns out. A lot of people may have no idea what Mike Johnson was talking about, but let's go to the tape here. The word tax appears 6 times in Article 1. Article 1 defines the powers of Congress. It tells us what Congress is meant to do, to include the fact that all powers that are legislative, in other words, the writing and the prescribing of what is meant to be done, that's Article 1, Section 1. That's almost all you need to know that tariffs are not meant to be something coming out of the executive. But we'll continue on here. In Section 2, it says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states. We don't have to worry about that specifically because we're not talking about direct taxes. Tariffs are an indirect tax. We're going to go down to Article 1, Section 8, and this is where it really gets down to the rubber meeting the road. You guys can see this on the screen if you are watching. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, this is specifically going to be things that are paid, and generally speaking, that would be tariffs, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So they don't mention that they have to be uniform outside, things coming in. This is my reading of it. I don't think that's all that far off here. You've got another one under Section 9. Suggesting that a tax or duty may be imposed on importation, not exceeding $10 for each person. This is the migration and importation of such persons into the state. I'm trying to remember what that is actually is even. What's the context of this? Oh, maybe they can talk about like whether or not you're actually coming in and you tax that change different states. We'll get some questions cleared on that one. Anyway, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census and enumeration therein directed. Again, and then no tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any states. This is the interstate commerce that allows them to go back and forth. But it's pretty clear that there's no Article 2 power. And of course, the left has seized on that. So you've got people freaking out about it and a little bit of argumentation going on whether or not what they're doing is even sensible. That's in contrast, I would say, to what went on under the Biden administration, which is where, if you listen to Donald Trump, the one thing that I'm struck about January 2025 was just before that, we had this senile, as my buddy Steve Friend likes to say, the doddering human Roomba of a human being sort of cruising around, making bumbling statements. And Trump in 2025, and now even in 2026, he's significantly more sentient. He's clearly more capable of having a discussion. He can hold a thought. They may not be the thoughts that we all agree with. They may be thoughts that destroy the American dream that Europeans have about being American or whatever the hell that was about. But you can very much tell that he's quite different than Joe Biden. Here's kind of a quick little viral clip that went on. This is a woman who's actually from Canada. She's not an American by birth. I think she's a naturalized citizen at this point. She goes by the very unpleasant moniker Politics Girl, despite the fact that she's just shy of 50. She's 49-ish or something like that. And she wants to get into that. She's talking about why we want to focus in on leftists and liberals and Biden and so on. I think the one thing that we can all say is that there's a massive and stark differential in just even the sentient capabilities of the current president. So, again, this is not a cheerleading thing. You guys know that I don't generally do that. But I do think it's quite interesting when everybody tells you that, especially the people you don't agree with, are most focused in on like a not a big deal, when they're most focused in on the minutia, whether or not they can achieve a dream for people that are not American. I think that actually is kind of Donald Trump's strength. And again, I just go back to that I did a post. I think it was on the 7th of January of last year. It said that this was trolling. It just gets them completely whacked out. It doesn't matter whether he's doing ICE enforcement, which is required, or whether he's going out there and trying to get some access to minerals and military base placement in Greenland.
What I'm hearing a lot is the Democrats, Biden. Dr. West explained that. And I think the thing is, it's not political to say that we don't want murderers in our country. We don't want pedophiles in our country. We want those people identified and we want those people punished.
Then why are you not working with ICE to get rid of them?
Hold on a second.
No, but it's a fair question.
Hold on a second. Just let her. And you
No, but you just said you want to get rid of them, but you don't work with ICE.
Let's let her make her point so we can understand what she's trying to say. Go ahead.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Lee.
We all want that. Okay? And if Donald Trump wants to get on TV and say, our problem is we haven't highlighted our accomplishments enough, I would say, great, highlight your accomplishments. Prove it. Prove you are getting the worst of the worst. Show us the murderers and the rapists and the killers that you are arresting. Stop yourself. Then tell us you're not rounding up.
With a picture.
You can't stop yourself, man.
Hang on a second.
Zip it.
Please.
No, I'm sorry, you're not my mom. And second of all, you don't get to make it up. We've had the posters at the White House, the people that have been arrested. You said, show them to me. We have showed them to you.
Ben, just a second.
You don't like it.
Ben, just a second.
I would suggest that the reason this woman is so hopped up, one, this is clearly an act. This is her thing. So she comes on and she acts outraged, and so she'll do it in her kitchen. If you guys have never seen this, I watch a lot of people on the political left. I want to know what they're saying. I want to know why they're saying it. That's one of the people. Acting like you are, I don't know, talking to a toddler when you're talking to a grown man. That is a uniquely bizarre thing in our time. I don't know why people think they can get away with it. I've seen it. I actually had a woman try that with me the other day. She wanted to explain to me how I can or cannot talk about gray hair, of all things. It's like, look, I'm a man. I'm talking to other men. I'm talking about things that men sometimes have. We don't worry about gray hair the way women do, I promise you. And if you do, men, correct yourself. There's an entire culture, especially in sort of the military, the law enforcement world. We talk about things like being a graybeard. It's almost like calling somebody a silverback gorilla. It's like, hey, you've survived long enough to be the guy who's got the gray beard. That means you're still alive. In any case, she's triggered because she cannot separate the utter failure that happened under the previous administration of letting all these crazy people in, and they can't take responsibility for it, so they just go bitch about Donald Trump. And I'm sorry for using that phrase, but that's what I hear in my head. It's a squawking, chirping, very obnoxious thing about why don't we get the worst of the worst out. I saw about 10 different TikTok type videos this morning as well as I was scrolling through the feed to figure out what's going on. The talking point is they're tear gassing 6-year-olds, and this child had to do this, and they're going out and taking down a 16-year-old child who's just going to try to see their father. And so it's all the most sympathetic things. Even this picture from NBC looks like a guy who's covered up and has got a face mask on, and that's not exactly confidence inspiring for regular people. I get it. The big push, kind of pivoting over towards ICE at the moment, is that they had some sort of person that they're calling a whistleblower. Of course they are. And this person who's a whistleblower is dropped a memo explaining that ICE can enter people's homes with force and they don't require a warrant. And so I did have a friend from inside the federal agencies send that over to me yesterday to look at. This is just the link that's being posted. The Associated Press is the ones that reviewed it. I want to kind of show you the kind of spinning of they're looking for any justification to have a domestic win. And we played it the other day of Ben Shapiro saying foreign policy seems to be the place where Donald Trump is most successful because he looks at it as a zero-sum game. And that's kind of effective if you're going to be able to check out things for your own country. Domestic policy is a little bit more sticky. This is a woman who has basically no chance of accomplishing her agenda, but it's not going to stop her from talking about it because the narrative is everything ICE is bad. Everything immigration is bad. It's all not friendly. It's not charming. It's not sweet. It's not allowing our quote-unquote neighbors. Remember, we like to hear that word, and then we think comrades. This is like a communist type term. And I'm going to give you another example of that as well. This is a woman out of New Mexico. Her name is Melanie Ann Stansbury. She is a congressperson speaking to a completely empty room, doing the classic governmental theater, doing outrage and a very well-scripted sort of discussion about let's get rid of the federal agency. At least Congress is talking about it in Congress where it should be happening. Are they going to defund this agency? No. There's some questions about how do you solve that problem. I'm seeing candidates address it as well. So I've got a follow-up from another woman who's running for office in New Hampshire on how you would even accomplish the quote-unquote abolish ICE. But that movement and that mentality is going to be something it looks like they're going to try to message in the midterms because they've got the outrage going of what's happening in Minnesota. They had the same thing out in California going back a few months ago. There are now enforcement operations happening in Maine. So there were some articles and headlines about that as well. So we're going to see the defund ICE, abolish ICE start trending. Here's kind of what it will sound like to an empty room.
It is beyond time to defund ICE. Beyond time to stop the violence, beyond time to stop the unfettered use of force against our communities, to stop the lawless violation of human and civil rights, and beyond time, Mr. Speaker, to stop the rot from the top, which has turned this agency into a rogue and lawless force that is terrorizing our communities. This week, this House will consider funding for DHS and giving more funding to ICE. So let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, I am not only a no, I am a hell no. From unleashing.
That makes my head hurt. Did you notice the let me be clear thing? It doesn't matter whether it's Kash Patel doing it or a Pam Bondi. Let me be clear, no one is above the law. It doesn't matter if it's this shrill woman from New Mexico talking about that who thinks she's Martin Luther King Jr. There is almost nothing more off-putting than a white liberal lady doing Martin Luther King Jr. style, waving the hands around. I'm not just a no, I'm a hell no. Let me be clear in 2026. If you guys need any more proof, I'll give it to you one more time, actually. I think that's the right thing to do. If you need any more proof that politics is show business for ugly people, and most of these folks that get up there, they have this dramatic flair in their mind. They actually think that they are the ones on stage, and nothing worse than doing this. You can look behind her. The seats are empty. I haven't seen a pan out of the room, but I'm pretty confident she's speaking to almost no one except some bored person sitting up in the speaker's chair because Mike Johnson's not even there. I'm open to being wrong if someone's got a shot of this, but you can't convince me she's speaking to anyone. There's no reaction. There's no crowd. This is 100% geared towards getting people that are your constituents to vote for you, being able to send it out in a clip somewhere, or hoping that it goes viral. The only way it's going to go viral is me cringing at it. But here we go.
It is beyond time to defund ICE. Beyond time to stop the violence. Beyond. No, I am a hell no. Be clear, Mr. Speaker, giving more funding to ICE. So let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, I am not only a no, I am a hell no.
It's so bad. In any case, I jumped into that clip. I saved you about 30 seconds of lead up to it. I just wanted to hear to do the hell no thing. They also have some problem in Congress. I don't know why it is, but every congressional hearing I've ever seen, every time I see one of these people get up and give a speech, they do not know how to calibrate the mic for peaking. Or these people don't know how to use proper mic technique. You'd think that if you're a theater kid, you would actually do a little better at that. All right, so what are they talking about? This is the thing that I just showed you a moment ago. This ICE says its officers can forcibly enter homes and enter warrants. A 2025 memo says it's posted over on Document Cloud. It will be in the links in a comment if you're listening on YouTube or if you're listening on Rumble. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, let's just go ahead and plug that right now. If you guys don't mind checking us out at KyleSeraphinShow.com. If you're listening and you want to read along with this is the way to do that. If you are listening on iHeart, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, check out Spotify. It's much better than most of the other ways you can do it. If you want to join us on locals, it's KyleSeraphin.com. Otherwise, KyleSeraphinShow.com is the best way to go. And for those of you that are listening on Rumble or watching over on YouTube, make sure you guys like this video, bump us up in the ratings, and share it with a friend if you are so inclined. We'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. Let's do this whistleblower. I've given whistleblower disclosures. You guys may know that about me. I've given quite a few of them, actually. I don't know that I've ever seen any of them released in this sort of press format that says anonymous whistleblower disclosure. I'm doing the Marco Rubio now. I'm holding my own eyebrows and smoothing them down. It actually does kind of wear me out when you see this stuff. So they've redacted some portion of it for who the sender was. This is apparently sent via email, January 7, 2026, RE secretive DHS memo authorizing ICE to illegally enter homes. Well, if it's authorizing them, I'm not sure if that makes it illegal. It says without a judicial warrant in violation of the Fourth Amendment. They're making some claims that probably would have to be adjudicated. I will tell you this in a very specific way. I really hate exceptions of any kind to the Fourth Amendment. I had this discussion yesterday with some guys from Gun Owners of America. I don't like exceptions to the Constitution. I don't like people restricting speech. I don't like people looking and saying, well, there are restrictions on the Second Amendment and what firearms or arms more broadly you can own or carry or bear. And I sure as hell do not like people being able to be seized or searched in their homes without a warrant. So we have built a bunch of case law up about that in the United States. I think those are all problems. I think this is probably why I am more to the right than most of the political parties could ever be. If you're an actual conservative and you want to conserve something, which is what that should mean, I want to conserve the actual protections the Constitution granted people, and really restricted government too is more accurate. It protected people from government. It didn't give you rights. It protected those rights from an encroaching government, which, by the way, has encroached for the last 250 years, and it keeps going. So here you go. Whistleblower aid represents 2 anonymous U.S. government officials in disclosing secretive, seemingly unconstitutional policy directives. They walk back the language immediately to seemingly. And you know, it may be judged to be appropriate, even though I don't like exceptions to that Fourth Amendment. And if you don't know, there are exceptions to the Fourth Amendment for things like exigent circumstances. There's things called the motor vehicle exception. There's all these different little ways that they have these tricks. I think there's something like 7 of them. If my con law was more up to date, I'd be able to tell you what that was. But the policy authorizes ICE agents or Immigration Customs Enforcement to enter homes and residences without consent in order to conduct arrests and removals without a warrant issued by a federal judge. I do see that as being kind of problematic, and I can imagine plenty of people should as well. Given that we are keeping their identities anonymous from oversight investigators, our objective is to provide as much information as possible, and it's 24 pages, and we're going to try to get to the actual memorandum. Let's see if I can actually find where it is. This is the form. The Congressional Research Service reviewed and analyzed ICE legal authorities. Notably, the CRS found that ICE warrants do not confer the same authority as judicial warrants. This is actually kind of a pretty common thought. There are 2 different types of ways you can get a warrant. You can get one for a person, which means you're going to get the arrest warrant, and the other is the search. So if you're going to get an arrest warrant, that means it's for the human being, but it doesn't give you cause to go barging anywhere that person might be. You actually have to have a pretty good belief, understanding. You have to have observed them going in. You have to have solid reporting that can be substantiated that they're actually somewhere before you go in and looking for them. You can't just go barging in houses because they may be there. There has to be like a probability and a higher probability that they in fact are there. So that makes sense. All right, so your ICE warrants, which are for people, not for searches of things. The Supreme Court has long held that absent certain exceptions, the Fourth Amendment prohibits the government from non-consensual entry into a person's home without a judicial warrant. Conservatives should like this as well. Except the exception, the little certain exceptions bit. Unlike judicial warrants issued by ICE, they're purely administrative, and they're not conferred, reviewed, or issued by a judge or a magistrate, and therefore they do not confer the same authority as judicially approved arrest warrants. Everything about our immigration system is so screwed up because you're playing in a totally different ballgame than the criminal proceedings, which is why you get people making the arguments that these are civil issues and so on and so forth. They go through Fourth Amendment, legal precedent, which has been eroding the Fourth for quite a long time. It's supposed to protect you from warrantless searches. It's the thrust of the Fourth Amendment, and the judicial warrant is issued as a neutral, detached magistrate. I'm just going to give you the eye roll as I look over here at the camera. Your magistrate is not necessarily neutral and detached. They almost always give a tie to the government. They almost always will give a lot more access than is probably appropriate. I don't know that they understand that their job is to be the last line of defense, especially in the federal system. Maybe our local law enforcement or state law officers, you guys can put that in the comments. If you have had warrants refused and kicked back for not having probable cause, it is a lot more infrequent in the federal system for some reason. And I don't think it's because federal agents or officers are doing superior affidavits. I don't think it's necessarily that they're not pushing the envelope occasionally. All right, so here's this May 12th of 2025 memorandum. The issue is, and it's quoted here, is that they are going to execute Executive Order 14159. Protecting the American people against invasion. Remember, the Donald Trump administration in the early part was pushing the idea of invasion, and they were doing that so they could use the Alien Acts to be able to export people from this country in an expeditious manner, and some of that stuff has failed. The executive order directs the Department of Homeland Security to, quote, ensure the successful enforcement of final orders of removal. Here's what it actually states directly, quote, although the United States Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is not historically relied on administrative warrants alone to arrest aliens subject to final orders of removal and in their place of residence. The DHS Office of General Counsel has recently determined, these are always really scary, that the U.S. Constitution, Immigration and Nationalities Act, and the immigration regulations do not prohibit relying on administrative warrants for this purpose. Accordingly, in light of this legal determination, I'm also looking sideways here. Legal determinations done by executive agencies are one of the big bugaboos I have. This doesn't mean these people are wrong, for whatever it's worth. Even though I generally think that the mission of ICE is both critical, it's defensible, there are clearly ways that you can step outside your authority. And when you start making your own rules, which is the reason why Congress is supposed to what it's supposed to do, ceding tariff powers and ceding all of the legislative powers over the executive, whether it be through the Administrative Procedures Act or otherwise, I always know this is going to go wrong. This is my biggest complaint about us not being really the constitutional republic we were meant to be. And they say here, quote, accordingly, in light of the legal determination, ICE immigration officers may arrest and detain aliens subject to final orders of removal issued by an immigration judge, the Board of Immigration Appeals, BIA, or a U.S. District Court judge, a magistrate judge in their place of residence. ICE immigration officers should consider all available enforcement mechanisms, including the use of Form I-205, to arrest an alien in their place of residence to achieve the requirements of Executive Order 14159. And then it says again, in accordance with applicable laws and policies. Whenever you start saying these things and you read, they always caveat. That doesn't mean the government should be able to just caveat and say they don't have to do things. Before entering a residence pursuant to Form I-205, ICE officers must knock and announce. This is the same as if you were serving a warrant. In announcing, the officers and agents must state their identity and purpose. Following the announcement, officers and agents must allow those inside a reasonable chance to act lawfully. That's a lot more nebulous than what happens when you're actually doing this stuff for an arrest or a search warrant that's been signed off by a magistrate judge. What happens then is you give them a certain amount of time to comply, and then you enter the residence with or without the permission. This is where you've seen battering rams. This is where you've seen forcible breach, hydraulics, and so on. Go back to the document here. Should the alien refuse admittance, ICE officers and agents should only use a necessary and reasonable amount of force to enter the alien's residence, following the proper notification of the officer or agent's authority and intent to enter. Officers and agents must not effectuate an arrest of a third-party residence without consent, exigency, or a judicial warrant to enter the third-party residence. I get what they're trying to do here, and they're probably not wrong, because I'm sure this can be very easily abused. But the language itself, I'm not sure it constitutes a violation of rule, policy, or law. So maybe this person is, in fact, a legit whistleblower. Now, all they have to have is a reasonable belief that they're doing the right thing as a whistleblower. But it doesn't mean that that's what's actually going on in this document. And I found that to be just at least a little bit maybe either disingenuous or interesting. It doesn't mean they're not going to use this sort of narrative, this moment, and they're going to find any sort of documents or headlines they can. Remember, what's the headline say? We just read what the document said. The headline says, ICE says its officers can forcibly enter homes during immigration operations without judicial warrants. Yes, but as the leftist fact checkers would say, that needs context. Does it mean they're not going to say that they should abolish ICE? Absolutely not. This woman's running for office in New Hampshire. She is going to go off about that, and we're going to kind of hone in on the things that they like to say and whether or not it even has any relevance to reality. I've got a couple of their congressional candidates doing the same.
So abolish ICE, yes or no? You said it on X. You said abolish ICE.
We should absolutely defund ICE. Yes.
So what happens next? How do you enforce the border? How do you enforce
We have a CBP,
law?
yes. Customs and Border Patrol. We have a Customs and Border Patrol. We should absolutely give them the right amount of funding. We have to do this, and we have to, if the law enforcement is an issue, if their crimes are an issue in certain cities, then let's use the funding to send those federal dollars back to the states, to our local police. Why create another extra law and order system which is not really enforcing law?
What's the difference between saying abolish ICE and saying defund the police?
I never said defund the police.
No, but what's the difference between those two sentiments?
The police force I believe in. The law and order system I believe in. We have a public defense system. We have a law enforcement system. ICE is not law enforcement. ICE is not law enforcement. Please, let us not...
So what happens when you abolish ICE?
Oh, my dear. Okay, so this is what happens. We often have people that have no idea what the rules are. They don't know what they're talking about, and they want to go out there and use acronyms, and they should have looked into the problem a little bit more seriously. So she said, we don't need ICE, Immigration's Customs Enforcement. We already have CBP, Customs and Border Protection. There are multiple different agencies that fall underneath these sort of general purviews of looking into customs, borders, protection, law enforcement. There's no question these people are all law enforcement. They're all going out and enforcing laws in the United States. ICE agents, many of them are 1811s. That's the same category of code that I was. They're criminal investigators. That's what the federal government considers them. That was my job code when I was working for the FBI. So she doesn't, strictly speaking, know what she's talking about. And she's even conflating the idea of CBP with Border Patrol. And so I'm going to just do a quick little primer as you're out there listening to people have these debates and discussions. Very quickly speaking, CBP, that's blue uniform. It's actually helpful to know that. They're the people you see when you come in from outside the country. They are Customs and Border Protection. Their job is to screen, to make sure people are coming through checkpoints properly, and so on. Border Patrol is the catching agency that catches people that sneak away from ports of entry and try to enter in places that are not a permissible way to enter the United States. So green uniforms with yellow badges, and they're creeping around in the deserts. They're rolling around in the woods. They're doing the things on the northern and the southern border. They do have the ability to work inside some of the same spaces as the checkpoint guys, but their generals are the gotaway, the people that are trying to escape the official route into the United States. And then lastly, you've got your ICE agents, and they're like your rogue sentinels. I'm just thinking of the movie Matrix, where you had those sentinels going out and looking for people that were, broadcasting pirate signals. That's your ICE agents. They're roaming around, not in the general border vicinity, but they are looking for people that have made it into the interior of the United States. They're doing the investigations long term. They're sussing them out and then theoretically arresting and deporting them through whatever process. I'm not an expert on this, but I do know who the teammates are, and they look like this. Blue uniform, those are going to be in your official checkpoints. Green uniform, they're not at checkpoints. And then no uniform, dressed like this guy. And there's some other agencies that do it as well, like Homeland Security Investigations. I met a couple of guys like that the other day. Just so you guys know, there's kind of an ongoing joke right now because the FBI has constantly called itself the premier law enforcement agency in America. And they self-delineate that way. And whenever you talk to an FBI agent, they'll actually use that. You'll listen to things on Fox News. You'll hear them say the same thing. They will self-congratulate. I've been using that, and so have a number of FBI agents I'm aware of, both retired and current. And we started saying that the premier law enforcement agency in the United States is Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. Many of you don't even know who they are, what they are, or that they exist. You've never met an HSI agent, but I have. So I met a couple of them yesterday, and I congratulated them on their promotion to the most premier. And I also said thank you for your service, which, they're regular dudes. They're dressed in T-shirts. Kind of funny. This ongoing thing, it is shaking up what federal law enforcement looks like and who is there and so on. What I'm realizing is that people have no idea what they're talking about, like this woman who's running for office. They're doing theater. They're doing this game where they're pushing their narrative on it. And the darkest part for me is it seems to be pushing the opposite of what I would assume are American values. They're these sort of like socialistic values. So I'm going to get an example of this. This guy is named Scott Wiener. That's his actual name. It's unfortunate. He's a tall homosexual representative for the state of California. He pushes a bunch of LGBTQIA. I'm saying it because his sexual orientation also seems to indicate his primary focus on politics. He constantly is representing himself with rainbow flags. He's pretty detestable as a person. He's done a bunch of weird things regarding minors and so on, saying that they're protecting gay youth, when in fact it looks like they're protecting adult predators. Anyhow, he's running now for national office. Sadly, in California, he probably has a pretty good shot. He's got great name recognition, and he's going to tell you, even in so much as neighborhoods, neighbors, the sort of comrade communist talk, that this is really about how Donald Trump has been taking money from healthcare subsidies, which is to say, money that is taken from everybody as a tax and then paid into certain people that can't afford things. those healthcare subsidies are being used to fund the thing that you hate. So this is another sort of defund / abolish ICE type message. I think this will work for people in Democrat areas because they're getting people so radicalized. We'll let you listen to it. You should at least know what the other side is saying.
Trump is using your healthcare subsidies to pay for his personal Gestapo. I want you to understand that the cuts to your healthcare are exactly what is paying for ICE's brutal campaign to terrorize, harass, and even kill our neighbors. ICE needs to be defunded and replaced. We need to hold these violent thugs accountable, and we need true universal healthcare. It's no coincidence that ICE now appears to have unlimited funding while your healthcare costs are doubling and tripling. Here in California, I've taken concrete actions to change this reality. First, I passed the No Secret Police Act, which makes it illegal for ICE to wear face coverings in California. This law went into effect January 1st. Second, I introduced the No Kings Act, which allows Californians to sue federal agents when they violate our rights. I'm making sure that Californians can get their bag if some thug shoves them in the back of an unmarked van. For those of you who may be a bit older, that means get compensation. And third, I passed a law requiring California to work with the federal government to move us towards truly universal health care, also known as Medicare for all. Because if we have the money...
So that sounds really great, doesn't it? It's hard listening to these people because they're going to talk to an audience. Again, we have a crisis of ignorance in this country, and the ignorance is people don't know where it is. Yeah, money is fungible. So if you take money and you were to take it from one place, you theoretically, if you're using it somewhere else, you can make the claim that all monies that are held by the federal government are in fact being used to do one thing or the other thing. We're defunding your health care in order to do this other thing. But the fact is that the healthcare subsidies ran out. Like you're not entitled to them. I don't know why people act like that. I have no business or I have no understanding of why the federal government should be involved in healthcare in the first place. There's not any evidence it actually is any better for anybody. It doesn't mean people are not going to talk about it, and they have been continuing to keep kind of like bringing this this healthcare dollars thing. What's amazing is they don't want to have that same conversation when it talks about funding for Planned Parenthood. And so let's just do kind of a tit for tat. It's not a whataboutism. It's the same exact argument that any funding for Planned Parenthood, which provides abortions, is in fact funding for abortions. They're making the same argument. What they're saying is any funding that the federal government saves money on one thing is being used directly for ICE. Just so we're on the same page of what's disingenuous and what's not. This is being discussed by Scott Jennings on a CNN panel. So this is obviously a talking point that if you're running for office in California, you want to bring it up. If you're going towards the center left side of CNN and you want to bring it up, it does tell me that the prevalence of this argument and this sort of healthcare idea that everybody should have it, they're also sort of saying the crazy thing, which is that there are in fact no illegal aliens on this. I'm going to show you how they get around that too, because I've got sort of a fact check from a liberal source, which kind of helps you understand that even though you're using the word illegal aliens, you're doing it and it's going to cause people problems because they're going to skirt the legal definition. They're aliens. They're here probably in like some veiled version of legality.
Political analysis is wrong. I don't think it's unpopular at all to try to reform an entitlement program, to save it for the people who need it, to keep illegal aliens from getting welfare benefits they shouldn't be getting, to encourage people to go to work. I don't think these things should be shied away from by Republicans.
None of that is true. First of all, I think Medicaid
It's exactly true. It's exactly what's in the bill.
Federal law prohibits undocumented immigrants
then why are
from receiving Medicaid
1.4
benefits.
million on it? Why are
That's a figment of your imagination.
It's a figment of the CBO's documents.
Let me explain the facts.
It's in the CBO documents.
I'll explain the facts.
Is it or not?
Let me explain. It's not, actually.
No, you are lying.
No, that is not. It is not true.
Okay, hang on a second.
Inventing facts out of thin air.
All right.
So Medicaid is.
Hold on, guys.
State program.
Medicaid is the most popular program after Social Security and Medicare. So $1 trillion cut to Medicaid, which is what Republicans just did, is not only bad morals and bad economics, it's bad politics. Medicaid is actually more popular than you, Scott Jennings. It has 70% approval rating among Republicans.
How do you know what my approval
More than
rating
80% among independents, more than 90% among Democrats. It's political suicide for Republicans to get Medicaid.
I think it's political suicide to come on as a member of Congress and lie about what the CBO says.
So the majority, the margin.
All right. So then they're going to go back and forth, and they're going to have their sound bites, and that sounds really great. This is the National Immigration. This is the National Immigration Law Center, and it's fact-checking immigrants, healthcare, and the 2025 tax and budget law. So there's a couple of interesting things in there. They're talking about the widespread claims that, in fact, illegal aliens are using them. They're not necessarily illegal. The problem, I think, is that people who are not American citizens and should not have access to American benefits do. And so they kind of go through who these people are. It says, did undocumented immigrants lose eligibility under the reconciliation law? No, they did not. The following groups, they're lawfully present immigrants. They lost eligibility for some of these programs. They're talking about refugees, asylum recipients, people paroled into the United States for more than 1 year. By the way, this is something the Biden administration abused dramatically. Survivors of trafficking or other crimes, survivors of domestic violence. Again, these are people that came into this country and then somehow claimed that domestic violence is a reason they should stay in the United States, as though the U.S. has some sort of duty to act on that. The following lawfully present legal immigrants who are lawfully present. It doesn't mean they came here legally. It means that they've been given some sort of legal status. So we're talking about, this is green card holders. This is people paroled for less than a year, people with what's called temporary protected status. That temporary status can last for decades. So that's bizarre. People with a non-immigrant visa. And they're presenting this as being a problem, just for whatever it's worth. I do think it was quite interesting that they break out the differential there between state and federal programs. The issue that we have with the federal government being involved in everything is the federal government takes your money first. They get first crack at it. Again, abolish the 17th Amendment. The 16th Amendment would be just fine with me. The idea that the federal government can tax us directly seems problematic, and it is the root of a lot of this stuff. But they can take your money first. Then they can turn around and give it to the states, and then the states can have some sort of awful program, and the parameters that the federal government puts on it is going to be further away from the decision makers. They're also conflating things like healthcare and welfare. And so you see these word games being played back and forth. They're ongoing. I think it's really frustrating because, again, most Americans just want to know, are you acting honestly? Are you doing what we're hoping you're going to do? Are you spending your time and your resources on something of value to me? Oftentimes, if they understood it, the answer would probably be no, but most of them do not, in fact, understand it. All right, I got two more things I want to do before we wrap up here. This is how we're going to wrap up. Thing number one, Donald Trump, even though he said some good stuff, even though he sounds like Fox News was reporting that he came home with the bacon on the Greenland deal, he also can't help himself about doing things that Americans, broadly speaking, I think on the political right, are very uncomfortable with. That one thing that will never go away. We talked about it the last couple days, COVID. It is not something anybody can shy away from. It's a topic I've seen here at SHOT Show in Vegas about 10 times in the last 3 days. It has come up as a question of whether or not people would do things they shouldn't do, whether or not certain policies were. People are recounting their experiences. Long conversation about it last night as well. Here's Donald Trump praising himself for something I think most people who like Donald Trump wish he would stop doing.
So it began. And we ended up with the COVID, and the whole world suffered. We did a phenomenal job. I don't think we got the credit we deserved. We did something that Operation Warp Speed, which some people say was one of the greatest military feats ever. We did a great job. Used our military, used a lot of people.
Was it a military feat? And did we use a lot of people? Yes. Did you force it on the military? No, you didn't. But the next guy did. And it turns out that actually worked out very poorly for a lot of us. So even though he seems really proud of it, he cannot walk away from it. Donald Trump can't help but patting himself on the back on some of this stuff. That's one of those things that I wish he would talk less about, or at least acknowledge a little bit. And this is the issue with humility. If people are not humble in any way, shape, or form, then they keep doing that thing, which is utterly unlikable. It really is one of his it's probably one of his biggest flaws. So here we go. Speaking of, this is what I want to close out on. The House Oversight Committee has recommended holding the Clintons in contempt in the Epstein probe. Guys, hold your breath for the nothing that's going to happen. You cannot understand how much the nothing will happen. The statement by Republican Representative James Comer of Kentucky said this committee, or the committee, does not take this action lightly after the Clintons skipped out on being in front of a Republican-led panel. The subpoenas are not mere suggestions. They carry the force of law. They require compliance. Former President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were legally required to appear for depositions before this committee, and they refused. Okay, guys, you've now recommended it, so let's see where that goes. He says he believes that the full House would vote on the resolutions in 2 weeks. So, as usual, headline is, we're going to find out in a little while. They've recommended that their friends make a different decision in the future in a larger group, and maybe we'll see some sort of Steve Bannon type experience, a Peter Navarro type experience for the Clintons. I wouldn't hold my breath. But I do like shaming these people, because if they actually hear it enough times, maybe they'll actually take some action. And maybe Americans could go, oh my God, there it is. Real quickly, I have a quick Glenn Beck clip from yesterday. This is a different part of the clip. And I'm going to share it with you right now. Glenn's talking about the things that we are not seeing, which I think we can all agree on.
Lack of criminal prosecution against Adam Schiff, or the New York Attorney General Letitia James, or anyone else that tried to weaponize the justice system against political opponents. Most prominently, that would be Trump. Where is any case on that? And you know what? If you don't have a case, say you don't have a case. But don't just leave it hanging out there. Lack of arrests for various Democratic scandals, including the Russia collusion hoax. Where's that? The Mar-a-Lago raid? I mean, we keep finding out it's worse and worse and worse, and nothing happens. How about the 2020 election fraud? That scandal. At least the lack of investigations into and answers on whether there was fraud. Nothing? You got nothing. A year in, you got nothing. Okay.
Okay is right. Look, we're not the only ones saying it here on this program. There are people that are far bigger voices saying things that I think are totally reasonable. The expectation is you made some promises. Where the heck are they? We're going to keep going back as we do and review previous statements and then see how they're holding up to the scrutiny of time. Glenn Beck, I think, is righteously and reasonably articulating the issues. Even though there are no cases, at least you could say there aren't. This whole drip, wait, justice is coming routine. It gets pretty old, so I don't want any of that. All right, from Las Vegas, I've got a little familial palate cleanse for today. As I'm doing that, let me just remind you guys, if you're watching on Rumble, please give us a like. If you're watching over on YouTube, do the same thing. If you're listening anywhere and you cannot see what we're doing, KyleSeraphinShow.com. Check that out so you can get to our Spotify page. Become a subscriber over there as well. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a free download. It's a free access. I think the experience is superior. You guys will like it. But wherever you're at, make sure you guys give us a like. Subscribe to the channels as you see fit, and share it with a friend if you are so inclined. Let's do something sort of fun to wrap all this up. This is a man explaining some things. Some of you have daughters. You know what I'm talking about here.
My daughter got asked to homecoming, and I just instinctively started sharpening things. And she's a good kid. I'm not worried about her. I just have 4 daughters, and I need the boys in this neighborhood to be a little bit nervous. And I think it's working, because my oldest daughter, when she went on her first date, the boy came to pick her up, and I said, I was going to be cleaning my shotgun when you got here, but my daughter asked me not to. So if you bring her home late, you're going to get shot by a dirty shotgun. And he didn't laugh, which is good, because I wasn't joking. And he did bring her home on time. She was 15 minutes early, and he rang the doorbell so that I would know that she was home. I like that boy. I miss him. He doesn't really come around here anymore. And if this seems extreme to you, you probably don't have daughters. You definitely don't have 4 daughters. I already know, statistically speaking, I'm going to prison for one of these girls. I just don't know which one yet. It's a numbers game. But bottom line, homecoming season is here. So girl dads, get ready. I hope this helps.
I'm going to dedicate that to friend and suspendable Garrett O'Boyle, who has 5 daughters. And he's going to go to jail for one of them, or he's going to get away with it, because inevitably somebody's going to need to push the line. I don't know why you'd push the line on Garrett O'Boyle. He's a monster of a human being, but yeah, it happens. So there you go. I'm going to go look at a bunch of things that are sharp and a bunch of things that are clean shotguns, and I will get back to you guys. If you're listening on Locals and you're thinking, hey, I would like you to show me the Ruger booth, for example, I'm going to go grab some footage of those. I'm going to wander around through these booths. So if there's one that you want to see, there are literally thousands and thousands of exhibitors here. So put it over on our local side. There's a thread for our subscribers there. You guys get the first priority. Otherwise, you just get to see what I bring up, and then we'll post it after I get back home and get a chance to look at it. God bless you. I hope you have a fantastic day. And thanks for being patient as this sort of long, weird, sitting in a hotel room, recording downstairs and upload thing's been going on. It's been kind of a chore. So you guys are great. And I look forward to getting home and doing our regular show. All right. Have a great Thursday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.